the truth awaits in the dark. True story.
Imagine living on an isolated farm, miles away from the nearest town. It is the middle of a brutal winter. The snow around your property is thick and untouched. One morning, you walk outside to check on your animals, and you see something that makes your blood run cold. You see a single set of strange footprints in the snow. They lead straight from the dark edge of the forest directly to your front door. But when you look closely, your heart drops. There are no footprints leading away. Whoever made those tracks walked into your house in the middle of the night, and they never left. They are still inside. Welcome to the Verdict Files. Today we are unlocking the police vault on one of the most terrifying and chilling unsolved mysteries in human history. The Hinterkaifeck murders. The year was 1922. Deep in the Bavarian woods of Germany sat a small, isolated farmstead known as Hinterkaifeck. It was home to the Gruber family. Andreas Gruber, his wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, and Victoria's two young children, Josef and Cecilia. They were a quiet, wealthy family who kept strictly to themselves. But the extreme isolation of their farm was about to become their worst nightmare. The horror actually began 6 months before the murders. The family's previous maid suddenly packed her bags and fled the farm in absolute terror. She told the neighbors she was convinced the house was haunted. She reported hearing bizarre noises at night, disembodied footsteps pacing back and forth in the attic, and the terrifying feeling of constantly being watched by unseen eyes. The Grubers dismissed her as crazy. That was their first fatal mistake. Fast forward to March 1922, just days before the tragedy. Strange and illogical things started happening around the property. Andreas Gruber found a newspaper from Munich on his property. No one in the family bought it, and the postman denied bringing it. Then, a set of keys to the house mysteriously vanished. A few days later, Andreas finally saw it, the footprints. He found a trail of footprints in the fresh snow leading from the forest straight to the house's attached machine room, but none led back out. Andreas even told his neighbors about the footprints and the missing keys. He mentioned hearing heavy footsteps in the attic above their bedrooms at night. The neighbors offered him a weapon and help, but Andreas, a proud and stubborn man, refused. He decided to handle it himself. He had no idea he was already a dead man. Friday, March 31st, 1922, was a dark and gloomy day. A new maid named Maria had just arrived at the farm that very afternoon to start her new job. It would be her first and last day on Earth. Sometime in the late evening, the killer made their move. The police investigation later revealed a highly calculated and methodical trap. The killer did not attack the house directly. Instead, they went into the barn and somehow lured the family members outside, one by one. First, Andreas walked into the dark barn. The killer stepped out from the shadows and struck him with a mattock, a heavy pickaxe-like farming tool, instantly crushing his skull. Next came his wife Cecilia. She entered the barn looking for him and met the exact same brutal fate. Then came the daughter, Victoria. Finally, the 7-year-old granddaughter, little Cecilia, walked into the dark barn to find her family. She was struck down right next to her mother and grandparents. With the 4 adults eliminated in the barn, the phantom killer casually walked into the main house. The new maid, Maria, was unpacking her bags in her bedroom. The killer brutally murdered her. Finally, the killer walked into the mother's bedroom, where 2-year-old Josef was sleeping in his crib. With one swing of the weapon, the massacre was complete. 6 people wiped out in complete silence. But the actual murders are not the most terrifying part of this story. What the killer did next is what keeps criminal psychologists awake at night. The killer did not run away. After violently murdering an entire family, this unidentified monster simply stayed. They lived in the house with the 6 bodies for nearly a week. Neighbors reported seeing smoke coming from the chimney of the farmhouse over the weekend. Someone was keeping the house warm. The police found that all the cattle in the barn had been freshly fed every single day. Bread was sliced and eaten in the kitchen. Meat was taken from the pantry. The killer made themselves completely at home, sleeping in the beds, eating the food, and tending to the animals, all while the slaughtered family lay rotting just a few feet away. It wasn't until 4 days later, on April 4th, when young Cecilia failed to show up for school, that neighbors finally went to the farm to check on them. When they opened the barn doors, they were greeted by a mountain of hay. When they pulled the hay back, they found the stacked, bloody bodies of the Gruber family. The police were immediately called, but the crime scene was a disaster. Hundreds of sightseers wandered through the farm, destroying any physical evidence. The police interviewed over 100 suspects over the decades, traveling merchants, local farmers, and even former lovers. But the motive remained a complete mystery. It wasn't a robbery because a massive amount of gold and cash was left sitting in plain sight inside the house. The killer didn't want money, they wanted the family dead. In a bizarre and morbid twist, the police actually removed the heads of the 6 victims and sent them to a psychic in Munich, hoping she could connect with their spirits and name the killer. It didn't work. And to make matters worse, all 6 skulls were lost during the bombings of World War II and were never returned to the graves. Over 100 years have passed since that cold night in 1922. The Hinterkaifeck farm was torn down the following year, leaving only an empty field. But the chilling questions remain. Who was the phantom living in the attic? How long had they been watching the family through the floorboards before they struck? And how could a human being peacefully eat dinner and sleep in a house filled with the people they just slaughtered? We may never know the truth, but one thing is certain. The next time you hear a strange creak in your attic or see a shadow move in the corner of your eye, make sure you check your locks. If you want to dive deeper into the darkest corners of true crime, make sure to subscribe to the Verdict Files and tell me in the comments, who do you think was hiding in the Gruber family's attic? If you have the nerve to dive deeper into the darkest corners of true crime and unsolved mysteries, make sure to subscribe. You have entered the Verdict Files. Tell me your theory in the comments below. Was the killer a neighbor or a drifting phantom?
The truth awaits in the dark. True story.